So how did chapter 12 end? Okay. The dragon who is, by the way, who is the dragon? Let's identify him.
Satan.
Satan. So he's down on the earth. He's making war against the people of God. And, there's a couple of ways that is explained. Our general approach to it is that it is the church. Another approach that is popular in some circles is that this is the nation of Israel, or the Jews themselves. And you will see that in a special series of books. And I forgot the names of them. LaHaye and Jenkins. Yeah. But that series of books, and it does a fairly decent job of explaining the Left Behind series. It does a fairly good job of explaining that point of view. It's too long. They're too long, but okay. That's my opinion. Okay, but we're going to take it that this is the dragon, and he's making war on the people of God. The people of God happen to be the church. I think there might also be some reason to include the Jews. And the reason I will say that, where did Christianity originate? Where did Christ originate?
The Jews.
Where did the scriptures originate, for the most part? Go ahead.
With the Hebrews.
With the Hebrews, with the Jews. So they could be in that line of fire simply because they gave the world the Christ. They gave the world the Bible for the most part. They were the chosen people of God in the Old Testament. That's my opinion, and that's for what it's worth. Okay, so what happens in chapter 13, the opening? You use the King James Bible, right? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. I want the King James, and I want any of the others that we've got. Yeah, go ahead and read it.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy.
Okay, and somebody read any of the others. New International, ESV.
I got the NIV.
Okay, that's good.
It says, the dragon stood on the shore of the sea, and I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name.
Okay, what's the difference between the two versions? Okay, and if it's talking about it's talking about John standing on the seashore. And the he would be the dragon from chapter 12. And most modern versions take the approach that it is the dragon that's standing on the seashore and watching this beast come up out of the sea. Have we met this beast before in this book?
In the whole book, or?
In an earlier part of the book, say like chapter 11. And
7.
Yeah, in verse 7, when it talks about the beast that comes up from the abyss, will attack them, overpower and kill them.
yes. So the beast will overpower the two witnesses and kill them. And how long did the two witnesses have? Okay, or 42 months, 3.5 years, or times and a half time. Those numbers show up in chapter 13. Okay? So the beast, he is described as having 10 heads, 10 horns and 7 heads, sorry. What does this associate him with? What does his description associate him with? Huh? Yeah, could be. But in the book of Revelation itself, go back, look at your chapter 12, the first part of it.
It's talking about the enormous red dragon.
Mm-hmm. He's got what?
7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns.
Yeah. Now the beast has 10 horns and 7 heads. And one of those heads, what's happened to it? Fatally wounded. Now, who else was fatally wounded and lived? Bingo. So this is one of the mechanisms of calling this guy Antichrist. Okay? Does that make sense? Fatally wounded, but yet lives. Now, with that being said, this guy is totally evil. He's totally evil. Look at Daniel chapter 7, verses probably somewhere around verse 8 or so, or maybe even further back up in it than that. What do you see in there? I hope I got the right chapter. Well, what do you see? Just
You see similar symbolism here amongst how the beast appear the animals that it mentions that it looks like. It even mentions 10 horns.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of the same type symbolism in Daniel that you see in Revelation 13, 17, and 19.
Yeah. And if you look at that closer, you're going to find that the beast that John is talking about is a composite beast of all the beasts in Daniel 7. There's the leopard. There's the bear. There is the iron, the beast with iron teeth, more horrible than the rest. And you move that back further into Daniel, and you have the monument, that's made of gold and silver and bronze. And then you have the stone that's cut out of the mountain. You got to get down to the iron and the clay, but stone that's cut out of the mountain that crushes it. Okay? Now, you guys got any questions or observations that you want to throw at me? I don't have any answers. Or okay. Let's talk about the term Antichrist for a minute. Where's that found at in the Bible? Huh? Well, the concept, I think, is there. But the term is only found in the book of the writings of John. 1 John, huh?
2:22.
2:22 is one example, and there's 2 or 3 more of them. But let's see.
Thessalonians also speaks to that.
Huh? Mm-hmm. I think so. So let's get those Antichrist verses and look at those for a minute. Basically, if somebody was supposed to write them down, sorry.
I have like 4 verses.
Okay, can you read them?
Okay, 1 John 2:18. Little children, it is the last time, and as we have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now there are many Antichrists. Whereby we know that it is the last time.
Okay.
And then 2:22. Who is a liar but he that hath denied that Jesus is the Christ? He is Antichrist that denieth the Father and the Son. And there's 1 John 4:3.
Yep.
And every spirit that confesseth not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh is not of God. And this is that spirit of Antichrist, wherein ye have heard that it should come. Even now already is it in the world.
Okay.
And
Is there another one? Yeah.
2 John 1:7. For many deceivers are entered into the world who confess not that Jesus Christ is come in the flesh. This is the deceiver and an antichrist.
Okay. So one of the features of Antichrist, as described in 1st and 2nd John is they deny the coming of Jesus into the world in the flesh, which probably is a take toward one of the Gnostic sects of the time. But there's that other one that says something like there are many, the spirit of Antichrist, many have already come into the world. And it would imply that there is a greater one to come. Okay? Does that totally confuse you? Now let's look at Billy's passage, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And there's only a few verses in there that you really need. The part I want us to think about is he sets himself up in the temple and claims himself to be God. Is that right?
He's talking about laws.
Yeah. Yeah. The man of lawlessness, the son of perdition. It's kind of interesting that the term son of perdition is used another time in the New Testament, and it speaks of Judas Iscariot. So all of these passages, the abomination of desolation from the little apocalypse in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the 2 Thessalonian passage, the 1 John passages, the Revelation 13 passage, the Daniel 7 passage that talks about the horn that usurps other authority. These all seem to be pointing to the same spirit, same type of individual. They had applications in history. Okay? They had applications in history. In Daniel's analogy, they applied to Antiochus Epiphanes, who was one of the Seleucid governors who decided he would set up an altar to Zeus in the temple. He did. He sacrificed a pig. Now, Jews might have been pretty compliant up to that point. Then the Maccabees arose. Okay? In Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the desecration of the temple before it is destroyed. First, it is desecrated by the Jews themselves. But the Roman army burns it to the ground. Okay. For the Christians in Asia Minor, what are they facing as we look at the book of Revelation? What are they facing? Persecution. And one of those factors of persecution is that they will not take a piece of incense toss it onto the altar, and say, Caesar is Lord. Get it? You might even connect that back with one of the passages that we looked at in the teaching of Jesus in the temple. When he asked the question, who does this coin belong to? Or whose image is on this coin? Answer, Caesar's. His response, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. And if that was a certain Roman coin, it would have gone on to say something like, Caesar, our Lord and Savior. You have a problem? Right. But is there a problem with the coin? Is he really Lord and Savior?
No.
And then you would come to a later emperor who demanded to be addressed as Lord and God. So, in the first part of this chapter, as it applied to the Christians that John was writing to, is probably one of the emperors of Rome. In general, it is state power that has gone to seed, if you will. It doesn't know the difference in its lane than the power of religion. Does that make sense? Or you think I'm totally out there somewhere? And if John is using for the mortal head that is wounded, if John is using a popular idea of the day, Nero was one of the first Roman persecutors of the church. He did that after Rome burned, 64 AD. It was widely thought that he and his boyfriend set the city on fire. So he found some scapegoats who happened to be Christians. He had some pleasant things that he did with them. He dipped them in oil and hung them up in his garden to be the lights at night. Sewed them up in animal skins and tossed them into the arena to watch the wild animals tear them apart. And under him, it is likely that Peter and Paul were martyred. But he fell out of favor with the Roman Senate, and they had basically sentenced him to death. But on July the 9th, AD 68, he committed suicide by stabbing himself in the throat. Mortal head that's wounded. Except a lot of people thought he didn't really die. They thought he went to Parthia, which was an enemy of Rome, and that he was recruiting an army to come back and invade. There were several imposters that took this myth up. There were at least 3 that I read about. One of them was fairly convincing to the Parthians, and they did lead an army against Rome. But the Caesar that happened to be in power dealt with it quite with a finality, you know. But, you know, even after the myth died down, it was still there that Nero was going to be reincarnated or rise again. And some people thought that in this concept, if you take the book of Revelation as being written toward the end of 90 AD, under the reign of Domitian, he is that guy that liked to be called Lord and God. And because of his persecution of Christians, that this was directed at him. Now, how does this apply to us? Keep in mind Billy's chapter from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Keep in mind Linda's passage that talks about many antichrists have gone out, but the spirit of Antichrist is there. Do we not have the same situation in the world today? Think of totalitarian leaders that we've had in the 20th century. Hitler, Pol Pot, Stalin, Lenin. You might even go to the cultic personality of Kim Jong-un. Any time that a government decides it is God, you're in trouble. Or its ruler decides he is God. Well, why are you in trouble? Pinch of salt, throw it in the fire. Caesar is Lord. What's the harm in it? You're expressing loyalty to your country. You're expressing allegiance to the emperor.
Well, that's not who you're supposed to worship as followers.
Okay.
So if you don't worship them, you're gonna be killed or
Okay.
harmed or put to death. But if you go with the flow and you worship them, then God's gonna smoke you, so.
Okay. That's a good way of looking at it. So, yeah, okay, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that, Mark.
They couldn't buy it and sell
Mhm.
they're anything unless they have them on.
Right. And we'll have a,
If they didn't have it, They're killed.
Yeah. Now,
So it tells who you belong
tell us who you belong to. And that sets up a contrast with the earlier passage in the book that Lovell is mentioning, the mark of those that were marked by God. Those that were marked by God. Now, whether in this form that was a literal mark or not is debatable. But there was apparently at this time, you got some sort of a certificate that said you threw your pinch of salt into the fire and you said those magic words, Caesar is Lord. That's for what it's worth. Okay. So you have this beast that arises from the sea. He's associated with Satan, the dragon. He is sometimes called the Antichrist. Some people don't like to use that term there, but really have no problem with it. Then you come to the second beast. And where does he come from? I guess we also should have said something about the fact that he came from the sea. The sea, as it's presented in chapter 17, is humanity. The chaos of humanity. So, humanity is in chaos. They need a leader. A leader arises out of the chaos.
But did not the beast always come from heaven?
Always comes.
Always came down.
Always comes from humanity inspired by Satan. So, we got the first beast. Where's the second beast come from?
Comes out of the earth.
Yeah. And what's he look like?
Well, it came from God, but it gave breath and power to the first beast.
Yeah. So what's this first one, this second one look like? And Lovell's on to something here that we got to keep in mind.
Well, it says it has two horns like a lamb, but it's spoke like a dragon.
So again, associated with the dragon, but looks kind of innocent, you think? Looks kind of innocent, kind of deceiving.
Somewhere or another, they knew whose name and look alike.
Yeah. So this beast, as Lovell has already pointed out, his role is to say, worship the image of the first beast. And he enables the image of the first beast to talk. And again, there was magic or ventriloquism that statues talked. The statues of emperors talked. But let's go further back. Let's go back to Exodus. What were the magicians able to do to begin with? Yeah, they were able to throw their staff down and it supposedly became a snake. They were able to turn water into blood. There was a third one that they were able to do that like the first three plagues, they could mimic them at least. So, does Satan have power? Does his forces have power?
Great power.
Yeah.
But the answer is the same way.
So here's something that I think sometimes in our Western world, there's always a scientific explanation to everything. Is there? Is science always right?
No.
Many times we do not take into consideration spiritual forces that may be at play. And if you open yourself up to demonic powers, you may be in trouble. No, probably not maybe.
At least you're in trouble.
You're just in trouble. And what is the main thing that these two beasts have? Kind of a word I just used. Power. What is the thing that many humans want more so than anything else?
Power.
Power. So if you're power hungry, why not serve the beast? He will give you power. Now notice that the first beast was given what? By the dragon. And I know I'm scattered. I'm scattered everywhere. But what was he given? By the dragon.
The power to deceive.
Power to deceive, but there's something else he's given. Voice. Something else. Huh? Okay.
Given power.
He was given power.
Given mouth and power.
Okay. And I was thinking he was the one that was given the throne. Yeah. Yeah. Was he given the power and authority? Yeah. There it is. Yeah. Now, who else was given power and authority? And this goes to the good side. But Jesus was raised into heaven. He sat down at the right hand of God. He has, in the Great Commission, he says, he has what? All power, all authority. Paul will write in Colossians or Ephesians that he's far above every rule, every authority. This guy was given power and authority by the demon, by Satan. Jesus was offered that by Satan, remember? But he took ultimate power and authority from God in God's way. So the second beast enforces the worship of the first beast. Both are inspired by Satan. There's a passage in 2 Corinthians that talks about Satan, how he appears. And it says that he even appears as an angel of light. Mm-hmm. So there's something attractive about him. There's something attractive about these guys, even though they're ferocious. Man, I babbled too much. Okay. So let's go to the magic number. So the magic number, 666. The beast. There is, in this time period, and maybe even today, there's lots of play with numbers. There was a piece of graffiti found in Pompeii. I love the girl whose number is 545. There was, and that is basically because they didn't have a separate number system from their lettering. So names could equal numbers. I like what G. Eldon Ladd says about this passage. He especially notes that by the end of the first century into the second century, nobody knew what this number stood for. But perhaps you have some clues. The name Jesus in Sibling Oracle, I think, is 888. The number of completion would be 777. This is called the number of man. 666. Short of completion, yet powerful. I'm going to read you. Huh?
Satan's got man's number.
Got man's number. This commentary has an interesting thing that talks about. Okay, 666, but complete certainty is unattainable. George Solomon's 3 rules for making any desired name yield the required total are still carried out in deadly seriousness by earnest Bible readers who imagine that John was really referring to the latest 9-day wonder in the world, politics of the 20th century. The 3 rules are: first, if the proper name by itself will not yield it, add a title. If the sum cannot be found in Greek, try Hebrew or even Latin. Thirdly, do not be too particular about the spelling. So, take your best shot. Most the ways that they work with this is they do something with. Now, what most likely was the book of Revelation written in? What? Greek. A lot of people take the 666 and they transpose it into Hebrew to come up with Nero. Well, the book was written in Hebrew. In Greek. So why would John do that to his audience? Now, if you did not have the mark of the beast, the 6666, you could not trade. You could not buy or sell. Heard any of that stuff recently? You've taken the wrong political view. Isn't it the same? It's the same Spirit. That Spirit is with us in the world today. Will this ultimately lead to the man of 2 Thessalonians? Perhaps. Now, the reason I say perhaps, many people don't buy this. But when is the man of 2 Thessalonians 2 destroyed? When is he actually stopped? I do have the right chapter, right? When Jesus returns. So, in my head, notice I said in my head, there is coming a day when there is one world ruler. Not only does he have the power of government, but he has the power of religion. Where does he sit? In the temple of God. He proclaims himself to be God, above all gods. Do we have mechanisms that could merge religion and government? Yeah. Yeah. We have those issues that are swirling around us. If you, and I didn't know, I heard about this a few weeks ago, but Certain people will not lend. You know, if they won't lend, they won't lend if you have a particular bent. So what could that do to a business?
Mm.
There was a scandal a few years back with the IRS and how they gave tax exempt statuses. Well, suppose you carry that a little further to Linda's idea. Healthcare. Well, the IRS was giving you a form that said you had the healthcare. Suppose you made a contribution to the wrong organization. Totally legal, or at least it looks that way on paper. But I don't approve. Maybe I'm sounding a conspiracy theorist. This stuff is real. The church is going to face serious challenges in the next, maybe even next year. I think we've come through one. We were trying to do what was right. But sometimes, did we give up something that we shouldn't have given up? Now, I'm not criticizing anybody. Not at all. And here's where we get into problems. We got nice property. Okay? How do we react if our tax exempt status suddenly goes away? What if, okay, your tax exempt status goes away, but you know what? That's not good enough. I'm going to take your property too. Now, are we ready for that? Are we ready for it? I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready for it. And, but what happens to the Christians in chapter 13? Yeah. Okay. What happens to the Christians in chapter 13? And we're finished.
They're made war against.
They're made war against and they are killed. But those that remain faithful overcome. And sorry if I ran over. Okay. I'm finished.